go through a story that just makes my blood boil. It personally affected me. It affected billions of people. I want to get into that. To help me go through that, I have a special guest, Shannon Joy. Shannon, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be here today and have a chat.
Yes. So just some background. Shannon is the host of the Shannon Joy Show. You can catch that on Rumble. She's also very active over on Twitter, and I'll make sure to put direct links to both of those. I was reading online that you were arrested during the COVID lockdowns, the tyrannical lockdowns, for fighting on behalf of children, forced masking, COVID tyranny, only to have Dr. Fauci admit to Congress, oh, a lot of that was made up fake science. Do you mind telling my audience about that story?
Not at all. It was the dark days of COVID-19. And I have to tell you, Stephen, I was triggered this week on Monday on my show because of the appointment of Chad Chronister, who was a Florida sheriff who arrested a pastor for preaching to his congregation in Florida during the COVID lockdowns, and a whole host of other things that this guy did. And thank God Trump reconsidered and, eliminated that nomination. He was up for the head of the DEA, which is a very powerful position. And so I actually went back in time. I was transported back to the dark days of 2020 and into 2021 in New York State, because they persisted with the mask mandates relentlessly for the children up until the fall of 2021. So for those of you who don't know what I did in 2020, I basically raged against COVID from March 7th until today. Every lockdown, the masking, the Operation Warp Speed, the social distancing. We were in New York State, so it was one of the worst of the worst states. It might have been one of the worst places in the world to be during COVID, because they were so brutal and relentless with the lockdowns. It was truly dystopian. And so, yes, in that time, I probably organized more than a dozen or 24 organizations across New York State, freedom organizations. We protested outside of nursing homes. We protested outside of hospitals. We protested outside of schools. We started organizations. And when it came to the fall of 2021, we were bringing probably 60 to 70 parents to my local school district every single month to rage against the mask. They had continued to force mask these children as young as kindergarten. We know now that it was all a fraud. It was all a farce. It was a complete lie. And yet they persisted with these subjugation techniques, psychological warfare, forcing us to do something absolutely ridiculous, right? But it was a sign of submission and, the turning off of our brains. Anyway, so yeah, we were pissing off the school board. They didn't want us there. We were bringing people every week and exposing them. And so on this particular day, they decided that they were sick of that. They created a ridiculous rule about masking. Apparently, if it falls beneath from the bridge of your nose to the tip of your nose, which is where my mask went, they would adjourn the meeting and call the police. And so they adjourned the meeting. Then they sent their security goons. There were 6 or 7 security goons at the meeting. They came over and said, you have to leave. And I said, I haven't violated any laws. And so they brought in the Monroe County Sheriff's Department. So Sheriff Todd Baxter approved of the arrest. They knew they were pre-called before the meeting. So they had already had the discussions. There were about 5 or 6 cars there. I want to say 6 or 7 cops there for little old me. Okay. So they came in and under the pretense of trespass, they proceeded to haul me out, stuff, cuff, you name it, and I was arrested for the mask falling beneath my nose. So that was in the midst of that, when we realized they had adjourned the meeting, when I realized that this was a setup and that they wanted to make an example out of me so that no other parent would ever stand up and speak out and advocate for their kids. They were losing the battle, by the way. Everyone was realizing at that time that the masks were not working and were ridiculous. But when I realized that they were going to arrest me, I knew that was what it was about. I decided to report on it myself. So I turned the camera on myself and I decided to Facebook Live my own arrest. And so really bad hair day, really bad outfit day, no makeup because I wasn't speaking that day. I was just in the corner. I was just going to record as press all of the speakers. And I ended up recording my own arrest and that went viral. 4 weeks later, it was dismissed. The DA, we brought about 70, 80 people to my county court, and the DA dismissed the charges in the interest of justice. And so then I proceeded to sue Monroe County Sheriff's Department, and I sued the county and also the school district, the Fairport Central School District. And so that's the story. Wow. Never had a ticket in my life, never had any kind of altercation, never been arrested, but that was a first for me.
Wow. Oh my gosh. I remember, I believe Megyn Kelly covered this story.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, oh, good for this mama bear, just like going crazy, fighting on behalf of children. I've had several people on the show that have been arrested at school board meetings. And in each case, it was literally the school board and the sheriff in cahoots, trying to control people.
Yeah.
And I'm just so grateful for people like you that, have the courage to go out and fight. I mean, since then, you have Dr. Fauci admitting, the 6 feet, we made that up. Yep. These masks, they don't really do anything. You had people in New York. I covered New York a lot, even though I'm in Utah, because New York was the #1 state watching my show during the lockdown. And I would report on, they were going after Jewish weddings, funerals. They were, encouraging people to rat on each other. And I was like, my gosh, is this New York or Nazi Germany, 1945? I mean, it was crazy the amount of police state that was happening in New York.
Prior to my arrest, to your point, the Monroe County Health Department, because I had a platform at that time, I was a radio host on a 50,000 watt station. I've since then platformed to video, and I'm primarily a podcaster now. But 4 weeks, when I mentioned I raged against all of it, I was naming names every single day, every evening on my show, calling out the health commissioner, calling out the health department, absolutely eviscerating their quarantine orders. And you're right, they had people snitching on each other. They sent Monroe County agents to my children's school. They had health agents sneaking around trying to get onto school property, looking through windows. And they actually, 6 weeks before I was arrested, they sent contact tracers, New York State health officials, contact tracers, 2 tracers, and a Monroe County sheriff and a Fairport police officer to my home on a Saturday morning to hand deliver a quarantine order involving my 11-year-old daughter. And so they came up on the porch, they scared my children half to death. And it was terrifying, frightening. 2 huge officers standing right in front of our house. My husband engaged with them. And it was an intimidation tactic. I had exposed the county health department the night before. I'd secretly recorded one of their agents telling me that they could send the police to my house if I didn't quarantine my daughter, insinuating to me that they could take my daughter, which is terrifying for any parent. Oh. The lockdowns, the brutality, what happened in nursing homes, what happened in our hospitals, the kill protocol of isolation and then remdesivir and dehydration, ventilator, death. They killed thousands of people, elderly dying from broken hearts. When I tell you we protested outside of nursing homes, I stood with parents and children, people who were separated from their loved ones, who died alone, heartbroken. They couldn't understand why they were abandoned by their family. We could not get those parents into those nursing homes or those loved ones into the nursing homes. There were no advocates. It was a disaster. The schools closed for a year and a half. Our kids lost a year and a half of learning, athletics, everything. New York State was a nightmare. That's part of the reason why I won't let this go. People are telling me to get over it. Oh, get over it, Shannon. No one cares about COVID. No one cares about the vaccine. That was the worst. A democide happened. A democide happened in this country, and tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands. When you look at the COVID vaccine and what that has done, we can never let this go.
Yeah, don't you think it's weird that Dr. Fauci made remdesivir one of the only ways to treat COVID, even though the clinical trials showed that it killed more people than it cured? I mean, literally, it had the nickname "Run Death is Near" when people tried to put someone on remdesivir. We had family members that got hospitalized. We told them, whatever you do not let them put your family member on remdesivir. Within a couple of days of going on remdesivir, those family members were dead. It was literally just shutting off their kidneys, filling their lungs with water, and killing them. And Dr. Fauci was basically holding that up as if it was the cure until they could get to the Pfizer and Moderna miracle shot. What are your thoughts on Biden now seriously considering pardoning Dr. Fauci? Many Americans today suffer from vitamin deficiency and lack the nutrients their bodies desperately need. Cardio Miracle delivers what your body and heart crave to achieve optimal health. After battling back-to-back Delta COVID infection in 2021, I was left extremely sick. My doctor revealed my nitric oxide levels were near zero, a condition that can lead to hardened blood vessels, poor blood flow, heart issues, and even brain fog. Cardio Miracle has a patented blend of vitamins, nutrients, and nitric oxide boosters. Plus, it tastes delicious. I drink it twice a day, and I can feel a difference in my energy levels, my thinking, and yes, even my heart. Plus, it's an excellent way for men to get a little boost in the bedroom. Maybe you're a diabetic. This low-calorie drink is diabetic-friendly and doesn't spike your blood sugar. It gives you the energy you need to get moving, which is an incredible way to improve insulin sensitivity. Cardio Miracle has a starter kit for my audience only. This offer is found nowhere else online. And that's because the owner, John Hewlett, only offered it to me and my audience after attending the Tucker Carlson event together. I want you to try Cardio Miracle today for 53% off. Plus, I got John to throw in free shipping. You will fall in love with Cardio Miracle just like I have, and I believe you will feel the improvement in your health just like I have. Check out the link below for 53% off plus free shipping. You're absolutely going to love Cardio Miracle.
Well, it's outrageous, and it's an admission that crimes were committed in 2020, 21, and 22, and throughout the Biden presidency. Now, the issue with Anthony Fauci, he is a villain in so many ways, embedded within the health establishment of Washington, D.C. for decades. 30 plus years, involvement in HIV, involvement in all sorts of scandals. He has a callous disregard for human life. He is financially benefiting through patents and a variety of mechanisms from his position in Washington, D.C. He is connected to every major pharmaceutical corporation. The medical industrial complex is embodied by Anthony Fauci. The corruption, the callous nature, that they have with human beings and souls. But the problem, though, Stephen, is that it's not just Anthony Fauci, and I get very concerned when there is a singular focus on a singular character, a man who is actually a cog in the wheel of that mechanism, more of a spokesperson and a proponent of the protocols that were put in place by the United States military. Because as I've uncovered with so many brilliant contributors on the Shannon Joy Show, people like Catherine Austin Fitts and Sasha Latapova, who revealed on RFK Jr.'s platform in 2021, everything that happened to us was a military operation. It was put in place and rolled out by the National Security Council, the NSC. They took control in a coup d'etat of our federal government. And to this point, they haven't let go. And so this is where, as a movement, I am very concerned when we look to figureheads within the federal government who do not have a lot of control. I'm very concerned that Trump does not have the control that many people think that he has. This apparatus is still in place. I just had an unbelievable interview with Sasha Latapova, who has collaborated with Debbie Lehrman, who is a contributor for Brownstone Institute, with a bombshell report from the Dutch government and also the German government that indeed their rollout of the countermeasures, so all of the lockdown protocols, the definition of essential and non-essential, and the creation of the bioweapon, the countermeasure that was the COVID vaccine, okay, or the COVID shot, they were all working in tandem. This was a NATO operation, one that the United States military was a part of, absolutely devastating. And so I don't think that people understand the scope of what was done fully yet. And we have villains, and certainly Anthony Fauci is a villain. There should be Nuremberg trials, and he should be tried, and he should be punished for what he has done to so many people and his role in that. But you know, as we move into a new administration, you look at an appointment like Kash Patel, who has been nominated for the FBI to head up the FBI. He was a high-level figure at the NSC in the rollout of this military operation. So there are a lot of moving parts. And I'm not saying that Kash had anything to do with anything nefarious, but at the very least, as Sasha points out, he was a witness to this crime. So this has much bigger implications. I don't think anything is over, Stephen. This is not over. COVID was just the first step. As we move into 2025, I think we're going to be looking at a financial crisis, potentially some type of chaos regarding war in the Middle East, our relations with Iran falling apart, Ukraine. There are so many mechanisms at play here. And so when I agree with you with Fauci, what I try to do every day on the show is just bring in, people who are clear-eyed. They see things exactly as they are playing out, because we have to prepare for what's coming.
Yeah, no, I agree. I believe it was a test run of how much control they could grab, how much liberty Americans were willing to relinquish in the name of safety. We gave up our safety for the illusion of safety. And that's pretty scary to think about. And a lot of people, like you said, they've moved on. And so then they're not looking back. You know, hindsight is 20/20. But if you only ever look forward, you don't see anything behind you. But so many stepping stones are appearing where you go, okay, now I see exactly how they manipulated us. What are your thoughts? I have concerns about Trump's Surgeon General pick, Dr. Janette Nesheiwat, I believe is how you pronounce it.
Yes.
What are your thoughts on her? Because she was like lockstep with most of the medical industrial complex of the lockdowns. And I can't tell if she's realizing, oh, wait a minute, I got played, or if she's genuinely saying, I'm not this person anymore. I don't know.
Well, that's the problem. You have the persona of Nesheiwat, who was a Fox News contributor. By the way, Fox News, they were one of the primary pimps for the COVID-19 vaccine. I'll never forget Sean Hannity on his program begging everyone to go get the vaccine. It's safe, it's effective. A lot of the commentators on Fox News perpetuated the lie that the shot was safe and effective, and Nesheiwat was right there with all of them. In fact, she went as far as to make one of those ridiculous nurse videos, the TikTok videos where they were dancing around and telling people to do their part. She shamed people who weren't obeying the COVID-19 lockdown protocols. She was for masking, double masking, triple masking. She perpetuated that lie. She perpetuated the lie of the safe and effective COVID-19 shots. And I believe in one clip, she was advocating it for pregnant women, telling them that it was safe, if I recall. And to this day, she hasn't recounted any of that. I've seen one clip of Nesheiwat on mainstream news media saying, well, maybe we got a few things wrong, right? About lockdowns, but that is not enough to hand over someone who got so much so wrong for so many months, a very powerful position of Surgeon General. That's an independent position. That is a bully pulpit that could be incredibly, incredibly effective for the American people. And I talked in great detail with Dr. Peter McCullough just a week or two ago about how important that role of Surgeon General is, how autonomous that role is and independent. Why aren't we looking at people like Dr. Joe Ladapo out of the great state of Florida, who has gotten it right in so many ways about the COVID vaccines? Why aren't we looking at Dr. Peter McCullough, who got it right from the beginning and actually lost a lot? He didn't take the paycheck. He didn't take the accolades. He didn't get the bonuses for going in and towing the line on these countermeasures. So the idea that Nesheiwat is going to be given even more power and responsibility is outrageous. And I'm beginning. We just took out the sheriff Chad Chronister. Okay. That was number one. We're going to look at some of these picks. Dr. Oz is another terrible pick. Terrible pick. I mean, Dr. Oz is into transgenderism. He featured children who were transitioning, getting the hormone replacement therapy. He was a full-on COVID pusher, COVID lockdown pusher, mask, vaccines, you name it. Dr. Oz has never recanted any of that. Okay. And so there are a lot of very troublesome picks right now. Nesheiwat is, I think, probably the worst. Oz is a close second. None of them are calling for the removal of the mRNA technologies from the market, despite the fact that we have an international body. The North Group has now sent an international letter. There are calls from all over the world to pull the shots from the market. They're that dangerous. Kevin McKiernan with a very recent paper that was pushed out by Dr. McCullough. It is incontrovertible, irrefutable. The DNA contamination and the SV40 contamination in these vaccines is absolutely a fact. They need to be pulled immediately. And so this is a huge blind spot within the Trump administration right now. And only our voice is speaking up. He tends to sometimes listen. It worked with Chad Chronister. He tends to be responsive to his people. It's our responsibility to stand up and let him know that this is not going to fade into the background, that this is the truth has to come out. And so we're in process here, but I agree with you. Nesheiwat is a disaster.
Well, I think one of the blind spots that Donald Trump has is he still believes that he saved millions of lives with this COVID vaccine. He doesn't talk about it because he's smart, but I believe he still thinks it in private. And that is worrisome to me. I believe he should surround himself with people like Dr. McCullough, Dr. Fleming, Dr. Kiernan, some of these others. Naomi Wolf would be another good one. Absolutely. RFK Jr. only has access to Trump's ears so much.
Right. And
not that RFK Jr. is perfect, but when it comes to understanding this stuff, Dr. Fauci, NIH, I mean, he's a walking encyclopedia about how all of this stuff, the military, all of that kind of coalesces together against or for the American people.
I think that RFK Jr. is a great appointment for HHS, and I support that. I worry that he's going to be confirmed. I worry that the deep state, and I hate to use the word deep state because a lot of people on the right think that the deep state only applies to the left and to Democrats. And based on everything that I've seen and all of the guests that I've had, and I have guests, every way I do 5 shows a week. Most of them, three out of the 5, sometimes 4 out of the 5, are people much, much smarter than me. And so I have them in, I sit back, I ask them questions, but I'm always looking for really great, thoughtful truth tellers, people who have the intellect and the smarts, but also the courage to lose things in order to tell the truth. And it's a very rare thing to find. And, when you look at at the mechanism. Again, we keep having to go back that this was a military operation, right? That this was both political parties colluding together in some capacity, at least to cover up that it was a military operation. And that's a fact at this point. There is no disputing that it was a military operation. Sasha has provided all the receipts there for that. And so, with RFK going in, he is dependent upon a confirmation and approval from the Senate of his appointment. And I can just foresee, with all of the chaos, all of the psyops, all of, the fear campaigns that are going to be leveled at the American people after Trump's inauguration, that's going to be a heavy lift. If we want RFK, there's also, word on the street, and, people yell at me when I do word on the street every once in a while, because I get tips, right? People tell me things and I can't always prove them. Right. And I don't want to always divulge my sources, but I do want to give the audience an understanding of kind of what I think is happening. There are many that it's becoming widely circulated that Trump knows that RFK Jr. is not going to be confirmed, that there's no way that he's going to make it through those hearings, and that he doesn't really care, right? That, RFK is a kind of a liberal Democrat. He's progressive. He's talking about MAHA a little more than he is even about vaccines. And so there might even be, agency from the right that is going to make it difficult to get RFK confirmed. So that's the question. And then once he gets confirmed, what can you do when you're looking at a swamp that is so corrupt? It's very difficult. This is why, from my perspective, all of the winning, our liberty and our freedom in this country is all going to come from the outside in. It is all from the county, state level, outside organizations. I don't see a path in Washington, D.C. Some people disagree with me. They think that we can send people in. They can, occupy this kind of narrow spot in, Dr. Jay Bhattacharya, a great friend of the Shannon Joy Show, great person. He's still recommending the COVID-19 vaccines, though, for certain people. He's not ready to pull the shots. But he'll have a discussion about it. You know what I mean? And he won't shut down discourse. But this idea that, he can go in this kind of narrow silo of NIH, and RFK can go in his narrow silo, and they can come in and make substantial changes in those positions. I don't believe that is possible right now based on all of the research and in the reporting that I've done. I could be wrong. And in this case, I'm waiting and watching, hoping I'm wrong, right? I'm hoping that Trump has, turned the page. He has a new understanding of medical freedom, and it will never lock us down again. But then, Stephen, you have RFK Jr. saying that on day one, they're going to declare another emergency like COVID verbatim in order to address the health epidemic in America. You have Donald Trump saying he's going to declare an emergency on day one to address immigration and the immigration population in the U.S. And so I'm like, no, we don't need martial law or emergency declarations. So, it's a wait and watch kind of moment. And I'm just kind of, I guess, a little more pessimistic than some of my colleagues. But at the same time, it's fluid. So we're going to watch them. And, there were some good picks, some bad picks. But I think our organization and speaking out, that's why that's so critical, because we can have impact on the agenda items in Washington, D.C. But I'm more interested in the organization from the outside.
Yeah. Well, I can prove to you that RFK Jr. is going to struggle. I don't know that he will or won't get in, but I can prove that it will be difficult. Number one, the top donors to every member of Congress is Big Pharma. And the number one stock that people own as members of Congress are Pfizer, Johnson & Johnson, big pharma companies, Eli Lilly. So they have financial incentive coming out both ends of them from
Right.
Big Pharma. I do think it's going to be an uphill battle that way. Here's another crazy thing. What about the CDC recommending that babies, by the time they're 9 months old, have 3 COVID shots. What is going on? Like, babies weren't dying from COVID. Elementary age students were not dying from COVID. Junior high, high school, it seems to affect older people. Like my 3 children had it. It presented like a cold, right. And yet they're going to have babies get 3 doses before they're even 9 months out of the womb. Your thoughts on that?
They got away with it. And this is the issue with bullies and tyrants. They never back down, right? So none of us should be surprised. At the end of the day, we reelected the guy and the administration and many people within his administration that did it to us in the first place. So the idea that the CDC wouldn't be emboldened to do it more and more and more, this is why, again, going back to that theme of get over it, forget about it. This is why I keep telling my audience, we can't. Because every time we forget about it and we give them a pass and we let them continue, they come back harder and stronger. Now, the good news, though, Stephen, is that the CDC is recommending this, but no one's getting the COVID shot. And so that's the area, there is Washington, D.C., and the media ecosystem that we all engage in, and Twitter and Rumble and YouTube. And then there's the rest of America. There is the body politic, the culture, right? And what I can find so much hope in is that the culture is indeed reacting very quietly. You won't go out and find any of your friends talking about how bad the COVID shot is and why they'll never take it again. But they're not taking it. Very quietly, they're saying, I'm not getting, I think the uptake rate on the COVID shot is in the single digits. It's got to be below 5%, maybe even as low as like 3 or 2%. It's abysmal, right? This is why they're trying to push the mRNA tech out to all the other vaccines. So be wary of your flu shot, the childhood vaccine schedule. They're transforming every vaccine, using these mRNA technologies. Like that's on the docket, and they're getting rubber stamped and approved really, really fast. So, I mean, from my perspective, every pharmaceutical product for me, it has a warning, definitely no shots. I mean, for me or my family right now. And so, but the good news is that childhood vaccine uptake is way down. Adult vaccine uptake, flu shots, way down. In every category, the American people, the consumers, are making decisions that indicate, even if we won't say it out loud, that we're changing our habits. And you're seeing that in all kinds of sectors. We saw it with the Bud Light boycott. We saw it with the Target boycott. We saw it in a few areas, and then we all got distracted by the election last year. So we were rocking and rolling with the culture and getting the word out. And then we tend to get distracted by elections and think that we got the good guys in there and now we're all safe. And then everyone goes back to sleep. And so we can't go back to sleep right now. But yeah, it's not surprising at all. They will do this, and they'll do it harder, and they'll do it more until we say no, until we finally stop them. And so, yeah, it's outrageous. It's outrageous.
Yeah. You're in New York. What were your thoughts? You wake up, you're getting ready to do your show, and you see that the CEO of UnitedHealthcare has been assassinated on the streets of New York. I was going, oh my gosh, like I know this guy was probably going to be in trouble for insider trading, selling $115 million worth of stocks.
Yeah.
But to be assassinated in the early morning, right in the streets of New York, I was a little bit blown away. What were your thoughts on that story?
I was absolutely blown away, and also blown away by the fact that Americans just kind of shrugged about it. Like it's this guy gets gunned down mafia style on the streets of New York, right? Videotaped. And we're kind of like, I mean, I think that it indicates Catherine Austin Fitts. I would recommend Solari to anyone watching your show. Catherine Austin Fitts. I have renamed her Catherine the Great. She's absolutely brilliant. the depth of her knowledge is really unlike any guest I've had on my program. So Laurie is a wonderful resource. And she is very clear that we're dealing with criminal cartels. That when you look at the Federal Reserve, you look at what's happening in Washington, D.C., the New York Fed, both political parties, unfortunately, and so many of our institutions, banking institutions, education institutions, pharmaceutical institutions at the very top, she calls them rackets, but they are criminal organizations. And I think that was just kind of, from my perspective, like, yeah, that should be happening, because that's what we're doing. That's why everything is so bad in America right now, because they have a stranglehold on all of our resources. They have a stranglehold on our currency. They're devaluing our currency. They're manipulating, the financial, impact of COVID on Main Street and individual Americans, and the subsequent inflation, rampant inflation. What we're feeling here is absolutely criminal. And so I think that there's, Americans see that and they're like, well, yeah, I mean, now word on the street. No, this isn't even word on the street. Sasha Latipova was just on my show earlier. And, this fellow was actually, the insider trading is one thing, but they were actually grappling with a massive data breach. So this health organization had the very private records of 100 million Americans because of a merger that gave them an enormous amount of access to Americans' social security numbers, private medical information. There was a data breach, and that was essentially stolen. I mean, all of those records, there was a major court case, and Sasha says that, what was the name of the guy? Mark, the CEO, what was his name again?
Thompson.
Was set to testify, that he was going to have to testify about that breach of data. She wonders if maybe that has something to do with it. I mean, there's a lot of speculation out there, but it is, I mean, I think it really exemplifies what we're dealing with in terms of the people who run things, know?
Do you think it was a hitman, a disgruntled father, or maybe somebody who was negatively affected by having a claim denied, or I'm trying to think of the motive of somebody, That
narrative is floating out there. And the fact that you mentioned it makes me believe that there is definitely a narrative agenda here, that United was the biggest denier of claims and all of their customers hated them. And it was, a dad or some type of disgruntled, consumer or customer. And I think that Alex Berenson sent out a tweet that inside the casing, there was etched, 3 words that were the words of a book that was about United. And I'm thinking at that point, I'm like, this reads like a novel, like some type of Tom Clancy, novel. Like sometimes reality almost seems like it's scripted, and then you wonder, like, what is this storyline that they're trying to kind of push out here? So, I mean, it's very difficult to separate fact from fiction these days. And, I probably won't engage in a lot of speculation about what happened there. But I mean, we live in an age of, Jeffrey Epstein committed suicide in his prison. You know what I mean? Like, it's just when you see these narratives pushed out, I'm always skeptical of them. And, I think that there's a lot of stuff that we can prove in terms of atrocities that were committed that I witnessed with my own eyes, and you did too in 2020. And so I focus on those things that are, but this was truly a stunning, just a stunning turn of events. Yeah. Terrifying too, frankly.
Yeah, Brian Thompson, and the words on the bullet casing were deny, defend, depose. I guess we won't really know what all of that means. Final question, Shannon. I appreciate you coming on. Do you think former Governor Andrew Cuomo will be held accountable for the tens of thousands of elderly people that died in New York? Because he decided to send COVID infected people into nursing homes?
He should be tried as a war criminal, along with many others. And I would probably include some Republicans in that as well, in terms of what happened in 2020. Unfortunately, at this point, I think because the American population, we continue to be divided left and right, Democrat, Republican, and we allow them to continue to yank us back and forth, thinking that the next administration is going to be the angel or the savior. And so as long as we're mired in that, I don't think that we're going to get justice. And interestingly enough, as you know, evidence of the uniparty, that's what I call them, or the unibrow party, because it's like a nasty unibrow that grew together. Like they were distinct at one point, they were separate and distinct. And then over time, they just grew together to this like nasty, ugly unibrow. And that's the Democrats and the Republicans. To use Andrew Cuomo as an example, he just joined a dream team that was assembled by Alan Dershowitz that includes Mark Levin, one of the heroes of the right. So Alan Dershowitz, Andrew Cuomo, and Mark Levin will be defending Benjamin Netanyahu at The Hague. He's being tried, I believe, for crimes against humanity. I'm not sure what for. But remember, Netanyahu was one of the worst lockdown tyrants. In fact, what they did with the population of Israel, to the people of Israel, in terms of the rollout of the vaccines was devastating, right? And the last time that Alan Dershowitz compiled a dream team, by the way, Stephen, was in Florida. They all flew in. It was Ken Starr, Alan Dershowitz, and a who's who of attorneys across the nation to surround Jeffrey Epstein and broker for him the sweetheart deal that got him out of prison. That was actually approved by Pam Bondi, who is now another one of Trump's appointments in his new administration. And so, like, sometimes you get the sense that it's a big club or maybe a small club, and we're just not in it. Yeah. And I think we need to wake up and realize that you know, the scoundrels are occupying both ends of the political spectrum in some way. But Cuomo deserves to be tried, along with many others. And I think we're right in the middle of this war. It is an omni-war. That's what Catherine Austin Fitts calls it. And an everything war. And I think we're right in the middle of it. But we can win it. You know, we didn't get to the optimistic part of all of that. I'm not this doom and gloom all the time. Where, you know, there's a lot of stuff that we can do to fight back and to win. And we're winning in a lot of ways, just not in the ways that people tend to traditionally think we're winning.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I agree with that. You know, on the surface, it looks like, you know, Trump had this landslide. But when you start digging into the data, like every state moved more conservative this election cycle, except for the state of Utah, where I live. It stayed about the same.
Okay.
But interesting times that we live in. Well, I appreciate you coming on and spending some time with me. If people want to follow you online, Shannon, where can I point them towards?
So Twitter is where I'm the spiciest. So I think I'm even a little more spicy on Twitter than I am on my show. So that's at Shannon Joy Radio is my Twitter handle. And then I'm live every day at noon Eastern time on Rumble, Spreely, Roku, Apple TV, all the platforms. So you can get podcasts as well. So my Rumble channel is Shannon, the Shannon Joy Show, I think. Thank you so much for having me. This was a really fun conversation, and I'll have to reciprocate and have you back on the Shannon Joy Show sometime. I would be absolutely honored. Well, thank you so much. I hope you have a great rest of your day. Thank you so much. Appreciate you.